All right, hello everybody. We've been having some technical difficulties here. Milena was logged in okay, everything was fine, and now there's some problem with her system. So I'm here all by myself, and that's okay. I can handle that. We'll hold the fort here until Milena hopefully resolves her technical difficulties and is able to join us. I know that the core focus of the interview that she wanted to have with me relates really, obviously, to business and entrepreneurship. So, maybe what I'll do is start with a little bit of an introduction. I know most of the people on this webinar are from Poland. I know I see some others from around as well, but the focus on the marketing of this was really mostly for people in Poland. And so I've never done any events or any speaking in Poland, so I doubt if any of you have heard of me before, and so I'll give you a little bit of background. So I am Canadian. If you hear my accent and it sounds a little bit American, that's because Canada's very close. And I was originally born in South Africa and grew up in Canada. And I started my kind of professional life off doing a variety of different sales and marketing jobs. And at some point in my early mid-20s, I decided that I would start my first business. Like many people, maybe some of you, I started that business out of necessity. In other words, I had a job that I didn't like so much. I worked for somebody that I didn't enjoy so much. And one day, I decided that I wanted to be in control of my own destiny and my own future. And so I resigned my job and I started my own business. And of course, it was not nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be, and in other ways, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I really made lots and lots of mistakes in starting that business and in running it. And one thing that I did very well was I learned from mistakes. I tended not to make the same mistakes very many times. And of course, that made it possible, I guess, for me to learn and gain experience and ultimately get to a place where after about 5 years or so in that business, I had really achieved a level of what we now call business freedom. That is, that I'd made the transition from being self-employed to being a real business owner. And one of the ways that I like to measure that is that, self-employed is somebody who, say, for example, owns a company and they work for themselves, and maybe they have many employees, but if they're still required by the business, if they still have to go to work, then I think that they're more self-employed than a business owner. And so, as I say, at about 4 or 5 years, I managed to start to move into this place of really being a business owner, that I didn't have to be at work on a regular basis. If I wanted to take a day off or a week off or even several weeks off, I was able to do that because my business was running mostly quite smoothly. And sometime later, I ended up selling that business. I sold it. It was in England, and I sold it just around about when it was 9 years old. And after selling that business, I ended up traveling around the world, and really, I accidentally got involved in speaking about business, and it really was an accident. A friend of mine in London was running a business network. A networking organization for business owners, and he asked me if I would come and speak for them because I had sold my company. And I didn't really know what I would talk about, but I decided that I would do that. I would come and share some of the things that I'd learned about business, about entrepreneurship, about marketing, and about life as a business owner. And it was fun. I really enjoyed myself, but what was really interesting to me was that, there were about 80 people at this talk, and at the end of the talk, there was just question after question after question, and there was a lot of real curiosity about making that shift from self-employment to business owner. And it kind of reminded me that before you make that shift, life is really difficult. I mean, it means that very often you're working really, really hard, long hours, and many times not even earning enough money to justify those hours. And somehow, magically, when you make that shift to proper business ownership, suddenly you find yourself with abundance of time, and you find yourself with an abundance of money. It almost is like magic. And so when I found myself talking with all these business owners, I realized that I wasn't simply lucky in my business. I got to where I got through because I'd worked hard and I'd made some good decisions, and I'd been willing to take risks and make mistakes. And also, I'd had some really powerful business mentors in my people who had really taught me different strategies and different things that would make my whole experience as a business owner a lot easier and a lot more productive. And really, in short, I can tell you that there are some things that people taught me over the years that if they hadn't taught me that, it might have taken me a year or 2 or 3 years to learn that lesson for myself. And then maybe I wouldn't have sold my business when I did. Maybe I would have had to keep it for another 5 or 10 years to kind of get to where I wanted to go. And so, I'm talking mentors like people like Richard Branson really inspired me a great deal. He's such a powerful and interesting, creative entrepreneur. And after reading some of his books, I ended up completely renaming my company, changing the branding, changing the way we structured some things inside the business. And those changes resulted in an explosive level of growth in our company. It was really dramatic. It wasn't a small thing. And so I have a lot of gratitude toward Richard for being willing to share those things and write about his experience so that we don't have to make the mistakes that he made. And I was also really inspired by people like Michael Gerber and Chet Holmes and many, many others, and Tony Robbins. And I consider myself really lucky because about 3 years ago, I got a very bizarre invitation to come and speak about business and marketing at some of Tony Robbins' seminars. And I think some of you are familiar with Tony Robbins, and he's definitely been a major inspiration of my life in terms of both business and personal motivation, inspiration, and strategies. And so all these people helped me to get where I was going. And so I realized when I was giving this talk that I wanted to do the same thing. And so for a big chunk of the last 10 years, I have traveled around the world speaking with business owners, teaching them some of the distinctions, helping them avoid some of the mistakes that I've made, showing them some basic marketing things that can really transform the way they look at marketing so that they're able to bring more business into their companies. And so many times business owners are more focused on how to get the next sale than they are on growing their company because they can't grow it without the sale. And so I really like to help them turn that corner. So that's a little bit of background about me, and I know some of the questions that Milena had talked to me about before this interview, before we scheduled the interview. One of the things she really wanted to know about was, really how do you make that transition? How do you go from somebody who's working so many long hours and working, just an unreasonable amount? And then how do you transition from that to having a business that's really giving you more freedom and more time? And so, that's a very good question, and it has a complex answer because there's a lot of different things that have to happen to create that, but not so many things that it's difficult to do. It's really a matter of some distinctions and shifts, and as you make one, the next one gets easier to make. So I'm going to give you an example right now of one. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of an organizational chart. In England or Canada or America, they often talk about organizational charts, and I can't translate it into Polish, so I don't know what you might call it there. In essence, it's a chart that shows all the people that are in the company and then has lines connecting, this person talks to this person who talks to that person and so on. And these are a very common feature of businesses that I've worked with over the years. And I think they can be useful. I think they can be interesting. But they're not they're not deeply helpful. In a very real sense, they're kind of one-dimensional. In other words, they show you a quick snapshot in time of who is in your company and how they talk to each other. And so many years ago, we created something that we call role maps. And role maps are a very different structure. What we do in that case is we go and work with a company like you and say, all right, well, and you can do this right now. You don't need me to come and do it for you. This is something you could do right now. And I'll tell you now that when I did this for my business, I did it when I first started the company. I did not have lots of employees. It was me, and I was trying to figure out what the company was going to look like. And so I created this thing called a role map, and here's how you create one. It's really easy. You start with a box, an empty box, and you put a label above the box that probably says managing director or owner or CEO or something like that. And then below that box, you created some more empty boxes, a little bit like an organizational chart, where those boxes will have labels like finance director or marketing director. I think I might have an example of a blank one I showed at a webinar the other day, if I can find it real quick for you. But the point is that these boxes are all empty, and the reason they're empty is that we're not right now tracking people, we're tracking roles. We're trying to see what has to happen in this company for it to deliver a good value, for it to deliver good products and services. What are all the roles? What are all the different responsibilities? Or what are all the different jobs inside the company? Here's one way of explaining this. Some of you are thinking, well, I haven't even started my company, or I have started my company and I only have me, or 1 or 2 or 3 people. And what I want you to know is this exercise is extremely valuable whether you have 1 person or whether you have 100 people. So here's what I mean by an example of a role map, an empty role map. I'll try and hold that still so you can see it. You see at the top, it's like the owner, CEO, and then you've got another layer, the sales, and then operations and accounting, and then below them, the people that report to them. So in the accounting area, you've got somebody handling, invoicing, and somebody handling paying the bills. And then over in the sales area, you've got somebody handling answering the phones, and salespeople. And in the operations area, maybe you've got people handling customer service or shipping. Every business is a little bit different, and every business is also very much the same. And so what you do is you start off with a blank role map like that. And the blank role map is really, in a sense, a starting template for what you want your business to look like in the future. So when I designed one just like the one I showed you for my business, I was the only person in the company, and here's all these boxes, and they're empty. Well, now we come to step 2, and step 2 is to start filling those boxes with the names of the people that are doing those jobs. Now, for some of you, like I was in that situation, if you're the only one in the company, or you only have 1 or 2 or 3 people in the company, what that means is your name is going to end up in a lot of boxes. But if you think about it, isn't it true? I mean, isn't it true that sometimes we quit one job, we start a company, and now we find out that we have 15 jobs, right? And that's what this role map really shows us, is what are all the different jobs you're doing? So like I said, that next step is to put your name in all the boxes that you're doing, and if you've got employees, put their names in the right boxes. And make sure that every box is full. And you might find, for example, that there's a job like, let's say, invoicing, and you're looking at that and going, wow, I don't really like doing it, but the truth is I am the one doing it. Or you might have another job like answering the phone. Well, maybe there are 2 or 3 different people that are answering the phone. Okay, put their names in that box. What you will begin to notice is a pattern. One is if there are boxes that have lots of names in them, those are areas of your business that probably have some confusion. And then 2, if you have one person like your name in many, many, many boxes, well, what's going to happen there? Probably a lot of too much work. In other words, if your name is in all these boxes, you have lots of different jobs. So that brings us to the next step. The next step is to highlight the boxes like this. Basically, maybe use stars. So look at all the different boxes and identify the ones that you don't like. I hate to say it, maybe even things you hate. Like maybe you don't like doing the accounting, or maybe you don't like doing the shipping, or maybe you don't like doing the sales. Whatever it is you don't like doing, the ones that you really don't like, put 3 stars beside them. Put 3 stars. Then look at some of the other jobs that maybe you don't like them very much, but you're okay to do it for now. Put 2 stars there. And then there's stuff that, well, I like doing it right now. One day I probably won't want to do it. Put 1 star. At this point, when you're done this step, every single box, except maybe one, maybe owner CEO, but all the rest of the boxes should have either 3, 2, or 1 stars. And the reason you want to do this is that what you right now have is a map to business freedom. You have a plan. You have the starting of a plan where you know the jobs that you're going to want to start to move out of. And I can tell you that for those of you who really play with me here and do this job properly, what you're going to find is that you you will notice that your stress levels already begin to come down. And you'll notice that some of the jobs that you're doing that you don't like doing, they'll get easier to do because you've stated a goal that you will one day stop doing it. And so one of the reasons we don't like certain jobs in our company is every time we do it, we feel like we're going to have to do it forever. Oh, I can't stand doing this. I have to do it all the time. Well, when we do this process, what we do is we create a goal. We state an intention that one day I'm not going to have to do that job, and so I'm only doing it temporarily. And somehow psychologically that makes that job a little bit easier to do. And so that really, really helps make the whole thing work. It helps to create a little bit of, it makes life easier inside your business. So that's, I mean, obviously I could talk about a variety of different ways of making this work. There's many, many more steps in other areas about creating business independence for yourself. I'll tell you though that step alone can be really, really, really powerful for you. So I hope you'll not just listen to me. I hope that maybe you'll actually take that step on board and do it. So I've got a list here as well. Let me just have a flick over here. So we had come up with some questions that so I want to kind of go through some of those. One of the common ones she asked, and I've done a bunch of these interviews lately, and I quite often get questions like, "What's the biggest mistakes you've ever made in business?" And it's really interesting because I think I get that question a lot because I always talk about mistakes in business. In fact, we're right now recording a video series called 99 Business Mistakes I've Made So You Don't Have to. And I like recording that because one of the things that I think is so important is that, frankly, the only real mistake you can make in business, there's only really one mistake you can make. Honestly, there's just really one that you can make. And that is to make mistakes that other people have already made or that you've made before. In other words, the only real mistake is to repeat mistakes. See, there's no point in doing that. If somebody else tried something, there's no point doing it exactly the way they did it because you're going to get the same result. Now, sometimes somebody tried something and you want to try it differently. Well, then you're making a different mistake if it's a mistake. And in that case, I don't think it's a mistake at all. It's an experiment. You see, and experiments are okay. If you try something and it doesn't work, it wasn't really necessarily a mistake. But if you try the exact same thing again and get the exact same result, well, now I think you're making a mistake. And so I love to focus people on the idea that wherever possible, learn from the people around you. Wherever possible, connect with other business owners and say, "Hey, I was thinking of trying this. What do you think?" And they might say, "Whoa, don't do that. I already tried that, and I already made that mistake." And then you're going, "Well, look at that. You've just saved yourself a lot of time and money. You don't have to make that same mistake." So I think that's a core thing to pay attention to. Go connect with other entrepreneurs. Find networking events where you can connect with people and meet them. I remember saying once years ago at a seminar, I said that entrepreneurship is often, business ownership is often a very lonely game. And my wife came up to me afterward and she asked me, she said, why was it lonely? And I said, well, it just felt lonely all the time. She goes, yeah, but you had employees and suppliers and customers. I mean, how could you be lonely? And I said, you're right. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. There were people around me and I was alone. And the reason is that as a business owner, the ultimate responsibility for the success of that business is you. I mean, you're the one that's ultimately responsible. And so it's really key that you don't do this alone, because the pressure of owning a business and worrying about paying your bills and cash flow and how to get new clients, all those pressures, if you bottle them up inside you, then yes, you're going to have a lonely experience. And so I'm a real big fan of making sure that you connect with other business owners, and that way you have a group of people that know what you're going through. You can share it with them. I mean, honestly, you can't walk into your company. Imagine you have 10, 20, 30 employees. You can't walk into them and tell them how bad you're feeling and what a big cash flow problem you're having. then you will be lonely because they'll leave. So instead what you want to do is go and have a group of business owners and a group of people that you can connect with that can really share with you, can help you avoid mistakes, can give you good advice, and that you can give good advice to. So I think that is definitely one of the mistakes I'd love for you to avoid, is making repetitive mistakes. Make only original mistakes, and things will get a whole lot better for you. One other thing I realized is that we actually can take live questions from you as well right now. So the only one challenge is that we run on a little bit of a delay. So I think you're hearing what I'm saying about 1 minute after I say it. So if you wait for me to ask you to ask questions, then they won't come right away. So if you've got any questions or you have any things you want to share, please go ahead and I'll do what I can to see them when they come up in the bar here. So I want to move on to something else. So Milena had asked me, one of the more interesting businesses that I was involved in was a movie special effects company in Northern California, and I bought that company. And so Milena had asked me how I got involved in film production and what made me buy that company. What did I have a background in film before? And it's interesting because no, I didn't. I did not have a background in film production and movie production before I bought that company. I had some awareness of it. I had some good friends that were in the business, and so I'd been involved in a loose way in some film production here and there. But no, I didn't know a lot about it. And I think this is important. There's an important lesson in this for people, and that is that as a business owner, you don't always have to know everything about the business you're in. What you have to know is about business. You have to understand marketing and people and hiring and training and how to manage cash flow. And owning a business is one set of knowledge. And once you have that set of knowledge, once you know how to own a business, you can actually own a variety of different businesses in all kinds of different industries, because the core principles of business ownership translate. They cross boundaries. And so I think that's something that's really important to remember and to recognize. In my case, I bought a company and I had to learn very quickly, but in the meantime, I've also owned companies in mobile computing and data capture, events management, medical simulation, research and development. What I'm getting at is I can't possibly know about all of those things at a very, very high level, or sorry, at a very detailed level, but I do know about them at a high level because in buying the company, I ended up having to learn about them. So what had happened in my case is that I was helping a group of people raise some money for a film studio, and I just fell in love with the place. And by the way, if you're ever going to make a big business mistake, it's sometimes going to be because you feel really good about something. I can tell you right now, if you are feeling really excited about an opportunity, or if you feel really good about a person, that's a good time to take a moment and do some research and to dig in and really make sure you're not making any mistakes. Because what happened in my case is I just fell totally in love with this business. I wanted to buy it. I ended up buying it. And after buying it, I found out that, wow, it was not that great a situation. And so that, look, I learned a great deal. I have no regrets about it. But it definitely taught me a great deal that it is really, really important to vet opportunities, to make sure that the people you're doing business with. As a matter of fact, one of my business mentors warned me. He said, don't do it. Don't buy the company. And I said, but all this technology, I mean, they're developing this great technology, and they've worked on all these great movies, Pirates of the Caribbean and Avatar and Star Wars, and it's such an incredible business. And he said, look, I understand. He says, the technology sounds great, but when you buy a company, it's all about the people and what's going on with the people. And what was really fascinating is that the employees in the company were phenomenal. In fact, many of them still work for me now in another business. The management of that company, not so good. And I inherited, of course, all the problems that they'd created, legal challenges and financial challenges and all this kind of stuff. And so my mentor was absolutely right. That company had significant problems. No matter how good the technology was, I really needed to pay attention to the people. So anyway, so I think there's some lessons to be learned in the mistake that I made there. A couple lessons. One is that when you're entering into that kind of a situation, you really do want to do the research. Like particularly if you're hiring somebody, or you're investing in somebody, or you're letting somebody invest in you, or you're buying a company, or you're selling a company. you really want to make sure that you get to know the people that you're doing business with, no matter how good you feel about them. And in fact, the better you feel about them, the more you want to do that research, the more you want to do that background check, because when you're feeling very good about somebody, sometimes your judgment can get clouded, or at least that's what's happened to me in the past. So I'm hoping that answers Melena's question there. I'm just going to check over and see if I've got, yeah, so I've got a question here. Is how can you build solid trust between your partners, especially when you have a new partner? So this is a very important question, and it's especially appropriate to the times because, well, and it's also appropriate to what I was just talking about. One of the challenges that comes up is a principle in psychology. It's a principle in psychology that kind of says that when you try to imagine the way the world looks to somebody else, you can imagine it, but you imagine it through your own ideas, through your own values. And what that means is that if you are a fundamentally trustworthy person, let's say you're the kind of person who you do what you say you're going to do. If we shake hands on a deal, you're going to follow through. If you're that kind of person, then what that means is that on some level, you might make the assumption that everybody is like you. In other words, you meet somebody, you feel good about them, you know you can be trusted, so when you think about the way they might behave, you assume they too can be trusted. Now, the challenge with that is that it's not true, and for many times it means that very trustworthy people are too trusting. So right now, the good news is we have the opportunity now. You know, you can do a lot of vetting of people. You can Google people. You can look them up. You can find out do they have reviews or is there any bad news about them out there? And of course, you know, that kind of stuff can be very helpful. I mean, even that you can use that when you're hiring somebody, when you're partnering with somebody, when you're staying at a hotel. You can look on TripAdvisor, right? So these days, feedback is a big part of how we can vet our partners. So now to the question. The question was, how do you build solid trust? Well, here's the very simplest way. Do what you say you're going to do. I mean, it's really simple. Start small. You meet somebody new, a new partner you're going to do business with, and you agree that you're going to meet at 4 o'clock for coffee somewhere, and you're going to have a meeting at this location. Well, start small. Show up at 4 o'clock or earlier. Show them that when you say something, it's true. And then at that lunch or at that coffee, you're having a conversation, and you agree that there are 3 action steps that you're going to take after that meeting. Well, then take those action steps. Actually do it. You know, sometimes we get caught up. Oh, yeah, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, and then we don't hit all those steps, right? So the way to build trust with people is just to demonstrate to them that you're trustworthy. You can tell people all day long, you can trust me, you can trust me. I got to tell you something. If somebody says to you, you can trust me, now you need to worry. Because somebody who's telling you that they can be trusted, I'm thinking what you want to do is you want them to show you that they can be trusted. And so I think that's a very key aspect in building trust with people, is that if you want to build trust in people, make commitments and then stand by those commitments. And then make bigger commitments and stand by those bigger commitments. Now, let's talk about another aspect of this, because sometimes what might happen is it's hard for you to meet one of the commitments you made. I'm going to give you an example from my company in England. So I had this company in England, and we were growing very aggressively at times. And so that obviously would create a strain on our cash flow at times. And so what that meant was sometimes we couldn't pay people on time. And I did not like that feeling at all. I hated it. And so, and then what I really didn't like is that if we had to pay people and then they would call us and they're chasing the money, or they'd write to us, and I just wouldn't even want to answer the phone. One day, one of my suppliers called my company, and they got on the phone with the woman who was handling our accounts department, and they were really mean to her. They were yelling at her. They were saying, "Where's the money?" They were really angry, and they made her cry. And I walked by her office, and I saw her later, and her eyes were red, and she'd been crying, and I walked in and said, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? And she said, nothing, no worry, it's fine. And I said, no, listen to me. What's going on here? Is this personal or is this business related? And she goes, well, it's a little bit business. And I said, well, what's going on? She goes, well, you know how we're having a bit of a cash flow problem right now? I said, yes, I do. And she says, well, you know, one of our suppliers called me today and they were really angry and they were yelling at me and I just didn't take it very well. Well, I didn't take that very well. I said, who was it? And she gave me the name and she told me who it was. And I went to my office and I picked up the phone and I said, hi, this is Eric. I understand you have some concerns about the money we owe you. And they said, yeah, we do. And I said, well, here's the thing. Before we talk about the money we owe you, you need to understand something. You can never call my staff and yell at them ever again. I don't care how late we are. I don't care what the circumstances are. You do not call and yell at my staff. If you want to yell at somebody, you call me personally. Here's my private cell phone. You call me and you yell at me, but you never ever yell at my staff ever again. And if that's not okay with you, we don't have to do business anymore. And they were like, the person like was like, oh, I'm really sorry. Maybe I was a little too excited and immediately apologized. So now, observe what's going on. Step number one is I am protecting my staff. So I'm building trust with her. So that's the first exercise in this. The second issue is I owe this person money. So now, of course, the best thing in the world is that I'm able to pay them or that I'm able to make a commitment to pay them on a certain date. So one of the things that we did in our business after this experience is we learned that what people really want is certainty. So they want the money, but even more than the money, they want the certainty. Or let's say if they can't have the money, at least they want some certainty. And so we looked at our process, and the old way that it would happen is if we owed somebody money, they would chase us for the money, just like we would chase the people who owed us for money, and they would call, and we would take the call, and they might, you know, write to us and all this kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? Here's what's interesting, and I want you to think about this. When you're going to be late paying somebody, when do you find out you're going to be late? See, I don't think you find out the very day the money was due. I think you know a week or 2 or 3 weeks before. We did. We knew. We could look at the cash flow. We could see that we were going to be late. So I spoke to my accountswoman. I said, listen, here's the new policy. When you know that we're going to be late to pay somebody, you write to them and you tell them that we're going to be late. And so we drafted a template, a letter, and it said, Dear Supplier. Of course, it had their name, you know, Dear Jim, John, Sally, Sue. I wanted to write to you because I am very aware that we owe you money on this invoice, and it would detail the invoice. And the reason I'm writing to you is that as a business, we know how important cash flow is and predictability with money. And so I wanted to give you as much notice as possible that we're probably going to be late paying this bill. We hate being late. We want you to know that our business is in fine shape. We're growing very well, and we're only having a temporary cash flow problem. As soon as we've resolved that, we're going to take care of you, and right now it looks like we'll probably be about 45 days late paying you. We're really sorry about it. If you have any questions or concerns whatsoever, please call our CEO or our managing director, and here's his private cell phone number. And we started sending that letter out to people anytime we were going to be late. And what we built by doing that was tremendous trust. In fact, what stopped was debt collection calls. Nobody ever called us for money anymore. They didn't call us looking for money because guess what? We'd already told them what the story was. So the first thing is that my employees had a better quality of life because they weren't having people chasing them for money all the time. So by protecting them, by standing up for them, I built trust with my team. Then secondly, when we wrote to our customers and gave them predictability, when we told them in advance, hey, we're going to be late, don't rely on the money we owe you, it's going to be late, they were grateful for the warning. We were building trust. Then we said to them, well, you know what, we think we're going to be about 45 days late. Well, what we always did is we took a look and said, we think we're going to be about two weeks late, then we'd add another month. If we thought we were going to be 3 weeks late, we'd add another month. Why? Because when we told them we're going to be 45 days late, we thought we probably only were going to be 2 weeks late. That way, if we're right, we're going to pay them early and build more trust. And if we're wrong and we end up being a little bit more late than we thought, we haven't caused them a problem because we've already told them to expect us to be late. The entire process built so much trust with our suppliers that this is incredible. We would get phone calls. I would get personal phone calls from our suppliers that said, hey, Thank you so much for letting us know. It really helps a lot. Is there anything we can do to help? And I'm not kidding you. I had suppliers call me and offer me more credit. They offered me more credit. Well, to the question here, the question was all about how to build trust. Well, if my suppliers are offering me more credit, even though I'm late paying them, that demonstrates that we've built some more trust. And so I think that's a really key aspect of the way you want to take a look at building trust in your business. And so I hope that answered your question. I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I have another question here. Yeah. Okay, well, so how do I hire good salespeople? I'm trying to find good salespeople. Let's say, how do I hire good salespeople? This is a great question. I love it, and it's a great answer. You're going to like this. Okay, it's really quite simple, because one of the problems is, and maybe you've had this experience or you've seen somebody go through this experience, but they want to hire some salespeople. And so they run an ad, and they get people to come in for the interviews, and they interview a few people, and they like those people. And so they just pick the one they like the most, or the one they think this is going to do the best job, and they bring that person in. And that person might be good, and they might not be good. And generally, on the average, they're not going to be good, because really, truly exceptional salespeople are not out looking for jobs very often, because they're good. They don't need to be looking for a job. So most of the salespeople out there that are looking for a job are average salespeople. So that means, on the average, if you hire somebody, they might not be a great salesperson. The problem with this is that that's expensive. It's very expensive to hire average salespeople, because you have to train them, you have to pay them, and then they go out there and they don't sell very well. And so now you're paying them, and you continue to keep them there, and they continue to use resources, and they're taking in the business opportunities, the leads and opportunities you give them, and they're not doing very well with them. And so all around, it can be a very expensive process. And 6 months later, you end up letting them go and starting all over again. So here's the way we're going to change it. And this is kind of fun. You'll like this. And I think we'll finish with this one unless I get any really super juicy questions coming in. But here's how it starts. First of all, yes, you still maybe run an ad, or you talk to a HR firm or a headhunting firm or what have you. Great. You get somebody to come in for the interview. You sit down and you're having the interview with them. In the interview, you get to know them a little bit. You ask them some questions. Don't ask them normal questions. Don't ask them all the questions that they're prepared for, because they've been practicing. If you ask them, so why did you leave your last job? They've been preparing that answer for weeks. They've been standing in front of the mirror going, all right, so why did you give up your last job? Well, it's interesting you asked me that question. I gave up that last job because I felt that the career opportunities afforded to me in that position were not as lucrative, blah, 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 blah. They've been practicing. They maybe gave up their last job because they got fired. They maybe gave up their last job because they weren't a very good salesperson. Who knows why they gave up their last job? But if you ask them a question that they were expecting, then you're going to get the answer they want to give you. So I say, ask questions they weren't expecting. You know, ask them where was their favorite vacation when they were a child. You know, and by the way, you'll learn a lot. Like, oh, by the way, you know, when you were young, which was your favorite parent? Did you like your mother or your father better when you were a kid? These are really bizarre questions, but they will tell you something about the people. And here are some of the best questions you can ever ask. Are you ready? Write these down. Honestly, write these down. You want to. Here's one. And it's important that you do this properly. What you do is you pick up your phone, okay? You pick up your phone, and you say, hey, if I were to pick up my phone right now, and I was to call your old boss, and ask him or her about you, what would he or she say? And then you wait with the phone in your hand. You don't have the phone in your hand because you're about to pick it up and call. You have your phone in your hand because it sends a message that maybe you are going to call. And because it's a question they haven't been prepared for, they don't have a script. They don't have a pre-worked out story. So they just end up telling you the truth. I have been blown away at how effective this is. You go, hey, so tell me, if I were to pick up the phone right now, and if I were to call, what would your old boss say about you? And then this is what they say. They go, oh, they say that I was a hard worker, and that maybe I could have been more focused. And they'll actually tell you exactly. And so now you know who you're dealing with. So that's a really powerful step. You can ask another question. If I were to pick up the phone right now and I were to call some of the employees you used to work with, some of your coworkers, what would they say about you? Same thing. they'll just tell you the truth. It's so interesting that when you ask questions that were unexpected, where they couldn't prepare an answer, they'll tell you the truth. So that's the first step. Now you've done that. You've made a decision. You've learned enough about them. Do you want to possibly hire this person or not? Okay. If you don't want to hire them, finish the interview, send them on their way. But if there's a chance you might want to hire them, now you have to do something really important. And that is that you have to get them to sell you. You have to get them to convince you. Because if they can't sell you on them, how are they ever going to sell your products or service or your company, right? So you have to get them to sell you. So here's how you do that. You say, hey, you know what? I've really been enjoying our interview. I really like you. I think that I think you've got a lot to offer. The one challenge I'm feeling is that I'm just not hearing that you're a superstar. I'm just not hearing that you're outstanding in the sales area. And then you're quiet. And then you're quiet because when you stop at that moment, there are only 3 reactions you should get. 1, they agree with you. Yeah, maybe not. Boom, show them the door. Thank God. You learn it now. You didn't pay them for 6 months and then find out, right? And then item number 2, they might say, they might freak out. They might feel insulted. They might like, what are you talking about? I'm fantastic. I'm amazing. That's just insulting. You're so wrong, right? Well, hang on a second. Thank God you found out now. Show them the door. I mean, that you didn't want that happening 3 weeks from now. Once you've already got them signed up for the company, you're paying them a salary. Great that you found out today, okay? And then the third possibility is they say something like this to you. You've just said to them, I'm just not seeing superstar. And they go, I don't know. I think maybe you need some new glasses. You know, because I got to tell you, everywhere I've worked, I've been one of the top salespeople. I work extremely hard. I'm really competitive. You know, if you're not seeing superstar, somehow I'm not showing it to you, but I want you to know I'm a total superstar. Now you're on the right track. Don't let them off easy. If they don't let them off easy, you know, reject them again. So they've just told you that I'm a superstar. I'm really competitive. I hear what you're saying. I hear that you say you're competitive. It's just when I look at our sales team, and they are really competitive. I mean, they show up early, they work hard, they make all the calls, they really work hard to hit and exceed their quotas. And right now you seem pretty relaxed to me, so I'm not getting the competitive spirit from you. And again, you could get the 3 answers. They could agree with you, they could freak out, or they could sell you. Do this and make them prove to you that they can sell. If they cannot sell you on them, how are they ever going to sell your products? If you just learn, if this is the one thing, the only thing you take away from this webinar, I think it can really, truly, truly help you as you begin to grow your business and start looking for some solid salespeople and marketing people in your business. So I will take one more. I've got one more here that I'll take, and it is it's a bit general, but I'll give it a go here. What is the most important skill for entrepreneurs? Well, I say that it's general, but I'm going to tell you what it is. And it would be easy to tell you, oh, there's so many. There's like 100 really important skills for an entrepreneur. I don't really think there is. There's probably about 10. You know, there's probably about 10 really important skills for an entrepreneur. But there's only one that's the ability to remain calm, to maintain a strong sense of certainty, to keep your emotions in check, to not let things bother you, and to be able to communicate and deliver a sense of certainty to the people around you. You see, entrepreneurs who are very dramatic, and when bad things happen, they're like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me. What they're doing is communicating a lot of uncertainty, all the people around them, like uncertainty that they're to their staff, to their customers, to their investors. And all the people around you want, really, is a sense of certainty that you're headed somewhere, that you've got a vision and it's going somewhere. And so one of the very most important skills that an entrepreneur can have is the ability to control their state of mind no matter what's going on. When something scary happens, boom, you step up and you make it happen. Now, that's not to say that when you leave the office, maybe you need to vent some of these things out. You need somebody to talk to about it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying, that you just have to like lock it all and push it all down. No. I'm saying that in the moment, you need to be able to control your state of mind, and you need to be able to pick your responses. Don't react to things. Respond to them. I'm going to give you a really great example. This was supposed to be an interview, right? It was supposed to be an interview. We're scheduled. You guys are registered for it. We log into the system. We see people logging in. Great. And then something technical happens, and Milena can't make it. Well, I'm not letting it bother me. I'm not mad. I'm not frustrated or upset. I say, hey, let's jump in. What's the goal? The goal here is to give you guys some value. The goal is to introduce you to me if you haven't heard me before, if we haven't met before. The goal is to let you know that I'm going to be in Poland next week. I'm going to be in Warsaw and Krakow next week, and I'm doing some events where I'm really going to teach some really powerful things about business. I've learned some things tonight. I hope that gives you an example. And so I look at that and I go, those are all the goals, so I'll just carry on and I'll be here for you. Where I know there are very many people put in this same situation that I was in. They'd be like, I can't believe this. How do I do the interview? Nobody's here, and they're freaking out. There's no point. And the better able you are to handle stress, the better able you are to handle events and not let it show, not let the stress out. You just kind of say, I'm going to deal with it, or not even let it stress you out at all. Then the greater certainty you're going to be able to communicate to your staff, to your investors, to your suppliers, and to your lenders, and to all the people that are around you that you need the support of. And the more certainty you give them, the more powerfully they're going to be behind you. So that's my answer. The most important skill of the entrepreneur is the ability to control your state of mind under any circumstances. With that said, I'm going to sign off, and I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I hope we get to know each other. I think I hope we get to meet in person. I'm going to be in, like I said, in Warsaw and Krakow next week. I think I've just sent you guys a website where you can find out a little bit more, but you can certainly go on Facebook and look up my name, and you'll find some details about the events. The events are going to be a lot of fun. I'll tell you right now that the way I tend to deliver information when I'm doing my workshops and events is that there's a lot of really good interactivity and storytelling. So it'll be a fun evening. You'll also have an opportunity to meet some really interesting people, because I already know some of the people that are coming, and you've got some really neat business owners and entrepreneurs that'll be there. And so you can start to expand your entrepreneur network. You might even find new customers and suppliers that you can connect with. And you're going to learn some really information. We're going to be talking a great deal about how one grows a business that does take over their life. And we're also going to be talking about how inception marketing works, and how you can massively improve your sales without spending more money. I mean, there are ways right now. Sometimes it feels like normal advertising doesn't work, and sales doesn't work, and internet doesn't work. Like things have just stopped working. How do we get new clients? Well, I'm going to show you that all of the traditional marketing methods, all the traditional places for advertising and marketing, they all still work. What doesn't work is the message that we're putting up there, and I'm going to show you how you can create messages that work extremely well. So, we're going to have a lot of fun in Krakow and in Warsaw. So I hope that I'll get to meet you in person. If you need any help finding out where the events are, find me on Facebook. You can also find Milena, and she'll be sending out a list of the dates and all that sort of stuff. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this webinar, we're going to leave the replay up. So you can certainly watch. If you came in late, I saw a lot of people joining late, so if you come in late, you can certainly go back and see the early part of it. And please feel free to share it with people. If you know other people in Poland that they own a business, or they're thinking of starting a business, or if you know anybody who you feel is like working way too hard and maybe not making enough money from their company, I'm promising you that we're going to share information at our events that will absolutely have the potential to change their business life. So please feel free to share the webinar or to share the recording with as many people as you like. I would appreciate the support, and as I say, I look forward to meeting you in person, and until we do, good luck with your business, have fun, and have a great night.